Welcome to this explainer. Let's jump right in, because today we're looking at the final crucial piece of a fascinating architectural blueprint for the church, often called the Old Paths. We're moving past the history of institutional decline and looking directly at a serious, earnest action plan for recovery. What does it actually take to rebuild depth?
Well, when you're confronted with a massive paradigm shift like this, the source material notes that every serious leader is bound to ask two very practical, very urgent questions. First, how will I know it's even working? And second, what is this going to cost me? And as we'll see, the report emphasizes that Scripture provides brutally honest answers to both of these, absolutely refusing to sugarcoat what genuine spiritual and institutional renewal requires.
Section 1. The trailing indicators. To build something that actually lasts, we first have to realize that we might be using the entirely wrong measuring tape. Take this number, for example. Right now, only 37% of pastors hold a consistently biblical worldview. But our source points out something really important. This is a trailing indicator. It's basically measuring a formation failure that happened decades ago when those pastors were young. By the time you can actually measure it, the worldview is already set in stone. You can't change the future by looking in the rearview mirror.
So here's the really surprising takeaway. The metrics most churches rely on today, attendance and giving, the report argues these are fundamentally just consumption metrics. They're just measuring how many people are consuming a service. And those numbers can actually climb even while true discipleship and formation are completely collapsing behind the scenes. If we want to predict the future, we have to start tracking formation metrics instead. We need leading indicators.
Section 2. 5 leading indicators. So what are the true inputs we should be measuring to predict the health of the next generation before their worldview hardens? The blueprint gives us 5. The first critical leading indicator is household adoption. Now, this isn't just about families showing up to church together. It's the share of families within a congregation who are actually practicing daily family worship at home. Research across multiple independent streams shows this is, without a doubt, the single strongest predictor of a faith that actually lasts into adulthood. The home is the engine.
The second indicator is catechetical progress. And the phrasing here is super important. It's not just about a kid being enrolled in a youth class. It measures whether children and youth are advancing through a systematic catechism by actual memory and true comprehension of doctrine. Are they really absorbing the whole counsel of God? Third, we have membership rigor. The source document argues we have to return to a standard where every single new member completes rigorous doctrinal instruction before they join. Essentially, this means completely tossing out the modern one-hour surface-level orientation and replacing it with a substantive catechumenate, a really deep course of instruction on the gospel, the confession of faith, and church practice. Indicator number 4 is scripture engagement. A church needs to measure whether its people, and especially its most committed weekly attenders, are personally opening and engaging the Bible themselves outside of Sunday morning. This is how you know if the faith is truly taking root on a personal level. And the fifth and final indicator is transition retention. The blueprint insists we have to track how many young people keep the faith through that specific, vulnerable move from high school into college. Why there? Because the data historically shows this is the exact pressure point where 2/3 of young people who grew up in the church end up dropping out.
Section 3. Counting the true cost.
Okay, but what is all of this going to cost? The report addresses the unglamorous reality of this shift pretty soberly. Using Jesus' exact arithmetic from the Gospel of Luke, it admits a really hard truth. Making this transition will initially look like a massive step backward. It's going to be slower and smaller in immediate appeal than launching some flashy new program. You have to know going in if you have the resources and the resolve to finish the tower.
And that presents a seriously difficult pastoral trade-off. According to the blueprint, a leader has to be willing to give up the immediate, wide appeal, the applause of breadth, that comes with a secret-sensitive service, and trade it entirely for the patience of depth. It's a generation's worth of unseen, quiet labor, just to grow those deep roots.
Section 4. The test of fire.
To understand exactly why this slow, difficult trade-off is so necessary, the report points to the Apostle Paul's warning that every builder's work will eventually be tested by fire. The source makes a profound claim here. The troubling cultural data and the worldview collapse we are seeing all around us right now, that isn't random. That is the fire. It is actively testing the work of the last century of church building. The report draws a really stark, uncompromising contrast. The seeker century prioritized building for speed and scale. The document equates this to building with easily burned materials, wood, hay, and straw. In contrast, the Church of the Old Paths, think the 1700s and 1800s, built for depth and permanence. They used gold, silver, and precious stones. Their converts endured because the structure they built was actually capable of surviving the fire. All of this leads to an earnest plea from the authors. You are not building for the next quarter's attendance report. This is a generation's labor. Think about it. The worldview of the children sitting in the nursery right now won't be truly measurable until they are adults, but that's exactly the point. The goal is to build a structure that is still standing long after the current cultural fires have passed.
Section 5. At the Watergate. So how does a deep, structural, multi-generational revival like this actually happen? The authors point us to a highly cinematic scene from the book of Nehemiah, at the Watergate. A people, newly returned from exile, stood for hours while the book was read distinctly and the sense was given, until true understanding finally came. The big takeaway? True revival came out of the word deeply taught. It didn't come out of a newly invented marketing strategy.
You know, the failure of past generations wasn't that the old, solid paths were hidden from them. It was that they simply refused to take them. So the blueprint leaves us with this challenge. Will we reject the shallows? Will we ask for the old paths and faithfully walk in them? It's a question of legacy, and it demands an answer if we truly want to build something that lasts. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.